Hello. Uh, so I just wanted to make a fairly quick video on political terminology and quote-unquote SJW terminology that is used a lot, particularly on the internet and in leftist circles or liberally progressive circles. This is mostly for those who are new, for people who are just unaware of what they mean completely, or they're like confused because these terms get thrown around a lot. So let's start with the basics. Number one, the term SJW. What it means is social justice warrior, and what a social justice warrior is supposed to be is like a liberally progressive person, but they've taken it too far in the minds of a lot of people. For example, someone who believes that white, straight men should die or something like that, well, yeah, that falls along that thinking, I suppose. And then the next term is anti-SJW, which is basically the people who are against those people. Some of them are socially progressive, some of them aren't. I would say that there is a common idea among that community that it doesn't matter what your opinion is as long as you're against SJWs. Although that's a very tricky situation, and I don't really want to capitalize on that too much because that would be a topic for another video. Or, sorry, recording. Next term is feminist. This one is easy. Basically, someone who believes, or someone who is a part of a movement for women's rights. And there's a lot of argument as to whether they are for women's rights or whether they just hate men or whatever. But for now, they believe they are for women's rights, and that's what the feminism movement is supposed to be all about. And now there are two terms that aren't really that basic. They're sort of more advanced for those who understand feminist stuff more. And so a lot of people who are like anti-feminist or anti-SJW won't really know them too much. There's liberal feminists versus radical feminists. Basically, liberal feminists are the ones who are basically mainstream. They'll be the ones to say that there are more than two genders, that there are, or that that whole thing where some feminists say that feminism is also about men's rights. I put that in quotes because, well, my opinion differs, but we're not talking about that right now. And then radical feminism would be the more men should die, there are only two genders, and gender equals sex. And they're also the ones who, they would hate sex workers, female sex workers. They basically follow really terrible ideologies, and that's speaking objectively. Like, they're objectively terrible. Okay, and then the next term I wanted to talk about was intersectionality. What intersectionality is it's hard to explain. Basically, feminism also focusing on black women's rights or transgender women's rights as well as just women's rights. It's not something you get a lot in men's rights circles. It's more of a feminism thing, and that's where a lot of people get confused a lot. I suppose it's basically seeing how being both black and a woman can affect you more than it can affect just being like a white woman. I don't want to get into it further than that, so let's go to the next term, which is MRA. MRA stands for Men's Rights Activist. Basically, it's people, not just men, just like feminists aren't only women. MRAs are people who believe that men face a lot of, I suppose, issues that would need correcting. It's basically a movement for men's rights, I guess. So it shouldn't be too confusing. They usually butt heads with the feminist movement a lot. If you look at the internet, that's pretty big. Personally, I believe MRAs to basically be the male versions of feminists. Though there would be more liberal MRAs than radical MRAs. Which kind of brings me to my next term, which is MGTOW, which is men going their own way. These are men who believe that women don't deserve to be dated by them or married by them because they believe that they will be treated badly by them. Now, I do want to very much stress that MGTOWs and MRAs are two completely different things. MGTOWs hate MRAs, and MRAs hate MGTOWs, so please keep that in mind. I know a lot of feminist people don't really know that and get them confused a lot, but for example, MGTOWs are the ones who got offended by Mad Max, I think. Yeah. Those were the ones to get offended by Mad Max, whereas MRAs didn't give a shit, but a lot of feminists seem to believe that it was MRAs who were getting offended by it, but it wasn't. It was MGTOWs. Okay, moving on. The next term I wanted to talk about was LGBT+. Now, the LGBT+ community is the gender and sexuality minority community, which is probably more confusing than just LGBT+. Basically, it's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and then for the full acronym, there's also, it's LGBTQIA, I believe, where QIA stands for questioning, intersex, and asexual. There's been some confusion that A means ally, but it doesn't. It means asexual, which is people who don't feel sexual attraction, and I suppose that would be another term that might confuse some people. And then the next term is transgender. Transgender people are people who are born into the wrong body, and they seek surgery to correct that. Now, there's a lot more to it than just what I said, but these are the very basics of the transgender community. And I do want to say that the words transgenderism and the words transsexual or transsexualism aren't really used that much. Transsexual used to be used a lot, but within just talking about transgender people, it's not really used. They just use transgender. And I'm pretty sure there's a difference between transsexual and transgender, but I'm not entirely sure, so I don't want to get into that too much. The next term I wanted to say was, TERF, or TERF. A TERF is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist, so they're among those radical feminists. And basically, they don't believe that transgender women are real women. They think that they are men invading women's spaces. And they think that transgender men are gender traitors. That's basically the gist of what they are. Now, and then next I wanted to talk about trans men, trans women, and then MTF and FTM. So trans men are men who were born into women's bodies, and they are also known as female to male transgender people, where they are transitioning from a female body to a male body sexually. And then transgender women, are women who were born into male bodies, and they would be MTF, as in male to female transgender people, and they would like to change their body completely female. Oh yeah, the term intersex, which I mentioned but forgot to define, are people... I'm going to fuck this up, I know it, so bear with me. Intersex people are people who are born with a mix of both sex characteristics of male and female rather than just male or just female. I don't want to say too much more because I might fuck it up, so let's move on from that and go to the terms okay, the terms sexism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, misandry. Okay, so sexism is when someone says something or does something prejudiced against a certain sex or gender. The two... Okay, I don't want to confuse you with more stuff, so I'll just move on to homophobia. Homophobia is when somebody does something prejudiced against lesbians, gay people, bisexual people, although that's a little different, which I will talk about in a bit. Transphobia is when someone is something prejudiced against transgender people. Oh yeah, misogyny is prejudice against women. Misandry is prejudice against men. Let's see. Aphobia or acephobia is prejudice against asexual people. Biphobia is prejudice against bisexual people. And then there's also the term lesbophobia, which would be prejudice against lesbians, but that is covered under homophobia. So for examples for all these terms, I would say for sexism, basically saying, I guess, all men should die, or all women belong in the kitchen. Misogyny is all women belong in the kitchen. Misandry is all men should die. Homophobia would be that someone is against gay marriage, I suppose. Transphobia would be saying that transgender women aren't really women, even though they are. Biphobia, I suppose, would be that bisexual people should just choose a gender and stick with it instead of, being bisexual. Aphobia or acephobia would be, I suppose, saying that, asexuals just haven't had sex yet, so they don't know what they're missing, sort of stuff. Let me think. What else did I say? I think that's all. That's all the terms that I said. And then the next two terms that I wanted to talk about, and to end this video on, I might make another video though if I remember more terms, are the terms, I don't want to fuck this up, I might. Truscum, Truscum or Truscum, I pronounce it Truscum, though that's probably wrong. Basically, Truscum, that sounds really sexual. They're people who believe you need dysphoria to be transgender, and that non-binary people don't exist. Okay. Some people think it's synonymous with the term transmedicalist. But there's a bit of an argument there as to what they believe of non-binary people. And I didn't I just realized that I didn't define non-binary. So basically, non-binary are people who are neither male nor female, gender-wise. It's not the same as intersex, because usually non-binary people are transgender and weren't born with both. They just have dysphoria for in different ways, because there are a few other terms, but that's for another video if I ever make one. And then transmedicalist is just, oh wait, transmedicalist is just someone who thinks you need dysphoria to be transgender. Gender dysphoria is when your brain misaligns with your sex and you feel that you have sex characteristics that you do not actually have. That's the whole basis for being transgender, so I would call myself a transmedicalist. Not too sure about truscum or truscum or whatever it's pronounced, because it does seem that there might be a bit of a division between the two. So that's it. That should be it. That's all the terms that I can think of for right now. I might make another video explaining more, but since it's gotten over 15 minutes on this video, I'll just leave it at that. So thank you for watching. Hopefully I've cleared things up a bit more. If not, I'm so sorry. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.